Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. So today I want to go through my sort of top 10 picks of champions in the game. Because there are top 10, most of them, or in fact all of them, if I remember right, if I just have a look at my list, are legendary. So I guess we could call this video the top 10 legendaries that are on my wish list. So there are a couple of honourable mentions that didn't make it onto the list. And what I did is I worked out a list of champions that I don't have on either of my accounts. So I already do have some of the better champions on one or the other account. So, for example, on my Galek account, I pulled Dracomorph and Duchess. And on my Kayle account, I've got Hierophant and Warlord. So, you take it and leave it with these champions and you work with what you've got. But these are the top 10 champions on my list for either account that would make a significant difference to my accounts going forward. So the first one on the list is not a champion that has anything, I guess he's a good champion, but he doesn't have anything different to his abilities. There's other champions that can do the same job as him. And I mentioned him yesterday in a video. So the first one is Corvus the Corruptor. I absolutely love the Plague Doctor look. And I absolutely love the champion. I love the way this one looks. I think he looks absolutely incredible. So I would have him in my teams just because of the way he looks. He does do a job. He's one of these solo champions, so similar to sort of Bardel or Tomb Lord or someone like that. So he can solo content. So on his A1, he's got decrease attack. On his A2, he's got increase the debuff duration for his enemies and increase the buff duration for himself. On his A3, he's got poison and poison sensitivity. And then on his passive, he's got decrease the damage enemies under poison inflict by 5%. And this can stack up to 25% the more poisons you have. And then he's got increases defense by 30% in all battles. So you put him as the lead, you put some food around him, you give him the masteries that give him increased speed, and then just let him go on this solo content. So you can solo stuff like Ice Golem and Dragon. So that's number one on the list. So number two is a Void Legendary. So Void Legendaries are a bit of a sore subject for me because I'm a free-to-play account. I'm probably not gonna accumulate enough Void Shards in a short space of time to be able to pull any of these champions anytime. So I've been very lucky on these accounts. I pulled a Warlord recently. I've got I can't even think. I've pulled Void Legendaries and I've been very lucky in pulling them, but I haven't got any of the sort of substantial ones. One of the ones that make it to top YouTube content or anything like that. Probably the most influential one that I have on this account is my Warlord that I pulled. But however, next on my list, and he's quite low down the list, and there's a reason for it, is Hegemon. So the reason Hegemon's low on my list is because I don't have the gear to be able to be competitive in Arena. So Hegemon would make a significant difference to either of my accounts and either of my Arena teams, but I probably won't be able to build a team to support him to be able to make it into Platinum Arena or anything like that. So even though he's very meta, I don't have the capacity to be able to build him properly and to be able to put him in a team that is competitive in Arena. So Hegemon, he's well known for one of these moves. Let me find it. So it's his passive. So he's well known for his passive, which is always goes first in each round. And if there's another Hegemon on the battlefield, it'll be the one with the quickest speed overall. So what you can do is make him go first, build him with accuracy, so he blocks active skills for the enemy team, or you can build him as an absolute nuke and try and take people down before the first round even starts, so you can disrupt the enemy team and then take them out. Or if you can take them out all in one go, or then take them out with your other champs later on. So that's my next pick. So he's number 9, or number 2, I guess you would call it. Hegemon, and there's a couple of other champs that are going to be like this in the game. So even though I would be absolutely made up if I pulled either of them, I don't necessarily think that I would have the gear to be able to build them properly to make them effective as other people can. So number 3 on the list is not a Void Legendary. Where is this one? He's a Demon Spawn. So you can see I've actually unlocked quite a few of the legendaries for Demon Spawn. I've been very lucky with Demon Spawn on both accounts actually. So yeah, the couple of honourable mentions, Countess Lix, Duchess and Candy. And then the last one is Prince Kaimar, which is next on my list. So that is number 3 on my list, or or whatever you want to call it. So Prince Kaimar was actually on a times 10 event when I first started playing the game. There was a lot less legendaries in the game when I first started playing it, and I had just learnt about sort of hoarding your shards for the times 2 events and not spending them in the times 10 events because it's not worth it. And I have always regretted not pulling my shards for Prince Kaimar because I still don't have him on either account, and for all I know, I would have pulled him that weekend. So it's just one of those things that I have a bit of a regret for. So Prince Kaimar is well known for his resetting the cooldowns of all his allies. So it's exactly what you think. You let all of your team go, leave Prince Kaimar to the last spot, and then activate this skill, and all of the cooldowns on all of the ally champs will then be reset, so they can just go again. So Prince Kaimar for me would be absolutely huge in my dungeon content. He's more well known for being in the arena, but for me, the dungeon content matched with a Seer would be absolutely incredible. I have Renegade on both of my accounts, and unfortunately, like I said with Hegemon, I just don't have the gear to make Renegade effective. She is really, really squishy on my account, so she can be in my teams for clearing waves, but she just wouldn't be the same as a Prince Kaimar because he has other utility in his belt to be able to sort of perform in these dungeons. So a second thing he's sort of well known for, especially in arena, is putting people to sleep. So he removes all buffs and then places a sleep debuff on all of the enemies. So that's what makes him significant. Well, those two skills together make him significant in arena. And then on his A1, he's got an attack all enemies and has a chance of placing poison if it's critical. And he's got speed in arena battles. So he's an arena champ, but he can be used in other content. So next up is another arena champ, not a Void legendary this time. I tried to not include too many Void legendaries, but unfortunately they are the best champions in the game, or some of them are the best champions in the game, so it's hard not to do a sort of top 10 wish list without putting Void legendaries in. But as I said, the next one isn't a Void legendary. So if we go into Undead Horde, and I've got two, you've probably already spotted the ones which I don't have and the ones that I wish I did have. So there's two champions in here that I would love to have, and they're a couple. So first on the list is Rotus. So Rotus is not as strong as he used to be. He used to be the biggest nuker, the strongest nuker in the game, especially for arena. But he has been debuffed, I guess, but is still relevant and is still a very good champion. Again, he's low on the list because my arena team and my gear capabilities aren't enough to be able to build a Rotus properly and to have him in my team like other people do to have him competitive in arena. So on his A1, he's got attack one enemy, has a 75% chance of placing a decreased defense, and also has a 25% chance of granting an extra turn. So this is the move, in my opinion. That 25% chance sometimes feels like a 90% chance when you're up against the Rotus, and he just keeps going and keeps smacking you down until your team's all gone. And then on the next one, he has attacks one enemy, destroys the target's max HP by 20%, and then adds that to his HP. I would say this is an interesting ability, but it's not what he's known for, unfortunately, because I think they've tried to go for something really unique with him, and I just don't think it works very well. So cannot destroy a single champion's max HP by more than 60% in one battle. Which is, I can understand why, because if there's an ongoing long battle, you will be able to take champs out and they wouldn't be able to be revived or anything like that, and they don't have that mechanic in the game. But at the same time, massively underused and underappreciated, and what it could be if they just sort of reworked this ability. And then on his A3, he's got attacks one enemy, will ignore 60% of the target's defense, will also ignore unkillable and block debuff damage. Enemies killed by this skill cannot be revived if this champion has gained maximum amount of HP when Vitality Plunder skill. Grants an extra turn if the skill kills an enemy. So with the ability to grant extra turns on his A1, and this one creating an extra turn if he kills an enemy, he can just be an absolute shotgun in arena and just take out your whole team without you even sort of realising what's going on. So that's Rotus. Low on my list, high on everyone else's list, but again, I just don't really have the gear to be able to support him. Next up on the list, for a very similar reason and a very similar role within the game, I've got a couple of dwarves in my list, but this one is going to be Trunda. So Trunda is well known. I don't even think I really need to go into her abilities. Trunda is well known for being the hardest hitting champion in the game, hands down. I think Heffrak might be quite close to her now, and Errol as well, since his buff a couple of weeks ago, is quite close, but obviously a different affinity, so used for different places within the game, used for different teams in the game. But Trunda, absolutely in the meta. Her A1 is attacks one enemy 2 times, has a 50% chance of placing a stun. A2 attacks one enemy, then attacks all other enemies with a second hit, dealing 60% damage inflicted from the first hit. And then on her A3, she has chance to stun, chance to HP burn, attacks all enemies. This is the move. This is the one that takes out your whole team. And if you build her with accuracy, which I personally wouldn't, I don't think she needs accuracy because she can just absolutely smack. But if you don't have the gear to make her smack, then maybe build her with accuracy. And then even then, your enemies can be stun locked and have HP burn on them, and then they can't go anywhere. There's a lot more I could say about Trunda, but it's a bit of a pipe dream for me. I don't think I'm ever going to get her. I'm sure they changed the odds on some of these more popular champions. So yeah, that's Trunda, and I'll move on to the next champion. Right, so the last champion on the list that's going to be sort of arena focus, and it's the one that goes with Rotos, which is Siphi. So a Void Legendary, very unlikely that I'm going to be able to pull any Void Legendaries anytime soon. But she might as well be on the wish list, because otherwise, what's the point of playing the game if you're never going to be able to at least think about pulling these champions? So Siphi, she has a great combination with Rotos, which is her passive here. So she can heal each ally for 10% of their max HP, and has a 40% chance of removing freeze or fear debuffs from each ally at the start of their turn. Removes all debuffs from Rotos at the start of their turn if they are on the same team. So, you know, Rotos, if he's got any debuffs on him, if he's got a stun, a fear, or a freeze, Siphi just removes it, and Rotos is just free to absolutely attack your team, bring them down, and then win the arena match. Apart from that, she's got a revive on her A3, and increases crit rate and an attack percentage, and fills the turn meter of the champion. So, you know, it's an absolutely ridiculous revive. The only sort of difference between her and a Duchess, for example, obviously the buffs that they place, but also Duchess can revive your whole team, whereas Siphi only revives one ally. And then she's got her A2, which is put these buffs on your champions. So if you build her fast, she puts a block debuff, increased defense, and increased speed. That increases the speed of your team so they can go next. It increases the defense, so if the other team goes next, they take less damage, and block debuff, so no one can be stun locked or anything like that. And then this is her A1 is under recognized, I would say. So she has a 100% chance of placing a sleep, and the debuff cannot be resisted. So she has 100% with no accuracy in her kit to be able to put a champion to sleep. So if you're playing manually on Arena, which I recommend, you can identify who's going to go next. Is it going to be the Arena nuker on their other team? And if it is, put them to sleep. The nuker doesn't get a chance, and then your team can just steamroll over them. So that's Siphi. She's on the list. I doubt I'll ever get her on either account, but you might as well start dreaming about it, and hopefully you can pull one of these champions one day. So that was the last sort of arena-focused champion on the list. And next up, I think, what are we in? We're in the top 4 now. So these are the top 4 for my accounts. So one of the things I love about the game is definitely Clan Boss. I absolutely love PvE content over PvP content. So Clan Boss being sort of, in my opinion, the sort of pinnacle and most accessible way of getting into PvE. A lot of these remaining champions are going to be Clan Boss focused. And that's just what I enjoy doing. I like seeing those numbers. If I was a huge whale, I would absolutely be crunching numbers and trying to make sure I break records and stuff like that in Clan Boss. Unfortunately, I just don't have the capabilities to do it. So one of these champions, one of the ones you see in some of these really high-end teams is Mashold. So he's next on the list. So Mashold is very well known for being in Clan Boss teams for his absolute... his utility, I guess. So he does have this A2 which grants an extra turn, which essentially means it's on a 3-turn cooldown rather than a 4-turn cooldown, as it says, which means he can rotate his abilities much quicker because it grants an extra turn on the ability. So this places a 30% increased speed and a 30% increased crit damage buff on all allies for 2 turns. Also places True Fear and Leech debuff on all enemies for 2 turns. So obviously on the Clan Boss, that's not going to put the True Fear on, but it will put these buffs on and it will put Leech on, so you can keep your team alive. So less requirement for anything like lifesteal gear or anything like that, or any masteries that do lifesteal. On his A1, he's got attack 1 enemy, heals this champion by 30% of the damage inflicted. Will then attack enemies under Leech debuff. So I think that must be a double turn, so it's an attack 1 enemy, but it's actually 2 times, because if you're putting the Leech down on this A2, then it will go again. And then on his A3, he's got attacks 1 enemy, has an 80% chance of stealing all buffs from the target before attacking, places 100% heal reduction debuff, which obviously doesn't work on the Clan Boss, and also places 2 15% continuous heal buffs on this champion for 3 turns. Damage increases by 50% against a target that have no buffs, so the Clan Boss very rarely has buffs on him unless it's the increased attack buff. And then on his aura, he's got increases attack by 34%. So what he can do is give your team higher crit damage, he gives your team increased speed, and he puts a leech on the enemy so your team can heal up. And then he can absolutely smack, does 50% more damage on this ability with enemies with no buffs, so like the Clan Boss, and then hits twice on this ability and heals himself up. So Mashold, an absolute beast in Clan Boss, and just a champion I would love to have. I wouldn't say he is as significant as a Siphi or something like that, but for me, he would absolutely be in my Clan Boss teams on either account without fail. I would find a way to work him into my Clan Boss teams just because he's such a beast. So next up is a dwarf, and a dwarf that has been on the list for a very long time. So this is Underpriest Brogni. So if any of you know anything about Clan Boss or any of the sort of legendary teams that are out there or record-breaking teams that are out there, Brogni is in nearly all of them. He was a fusion. I think he was either a fusion or a fragment. And a lot of people said to skip him, which I did. And oh boy, I regret that so much at this point. I skipped him on both of my accounts, and I've seen him change accounts and change Clan Boss teams completely. He's insane, and we'll go through his kit. So on his A1, he's got attacked 1 enemy, has a 45% chance of placing a HP burn. That's fine, that sounds great. It's 45% and then increases to 60%. So Clan Boss HP burn on the Clan Boss 60% of the time, or 60% of his attacks. So that sounds great to me. On his A2, he's got attacks all enemies, has a 75% chance of removing 1 random buff from all enemies, has a 75% chance of removing 1 buff from all allies, 1 debuff from all allies, increases the value of shield buffs on all allies by 30% of the damage inflicted. So what people do is they build an infinity team. So they have champions like Krisk and Hell Freak, I think it is, which is a rare, that increase the buffs on your champions. So you make them faster than the buffs can go down, and then you have an infinite amount of buffs on the champion. So then there's a shield buff on the champions all the time that's constantly being increased by 30% of the damage inflicted by Brogni's A2 ability. You match that with someone with a shield set, which then increases as the other champions are increasing buff turns on each champion. He can increase that shield buff as well. So then they have a double shield, which is just exponentially growing every time he has a turn, or every time he uses this ability. So that's his A2, and then on his A3 he's got places of block debuffs, an increase attack, and also places a shield buff on all allies for 2 turns equal to 30% of this champion's max HP. The shield buff cannot be removed. So that's a protected one. That doesn't necessarily matter in Clan Boss, but it does matter in other content, especially Arena. So he places his own shield, which he can then increase the value of that shield with his A2. And then one of the sort of less talked about abilities is his passive. So whenever an ally is under shield buff, is attacked, it reflects 25% of the damage inflicted on the shield back to the attacker. Also heals that ally by 25% of the damage inflicted on the shield. So he's constantly healing up your team, he's shielding them from damage, he's increasing the damage, and he's placing a HP burn on the enemy. An absolutely incredible champion. I don't know, I can't remember my mentality. Maybe I just didn't read through his kit properly, but when people were telling me to skip him, I listened to them and I really regret it. So Brogni is probably, well, he's top 3 of my most wanted champions. And you'll understand why he's not number 1 when I get onto the other champions. So next up is another dwarf. She's second, because I just don't believe at this point in my raid career that I'm ever going to achieve getting her. So that would be Acrisia. Acrisia is a fairly new champion, and probably the strongest damage on enemy max HP in the game. So she might not be the biggest smacker for that ability, but she is absolutely the best one in the game. So on her A1, attacks one enemy, has a 45% chance of placing decreased defense. The damage of this skill increases by 10% every time this skill is used, stacks up to 100%. So has a 100% increase on that damage if you're in a long fight. Her A2 attacks all enemies 2 times, places a shield buff on this champion for 2 turns, so she protects herself. And you want to build this champion with damage, so that shield it might not be that significant, but it will stop some damage coming in on this champion, and it's equal to 5% of the champion's max HP. That is, both of these attacks, I forgot to say, are both based on enemy max HP. So the A1 and the A2 and the A3, which is attacks one enemy 2 times, has an 80% chance of stealing 100% of the target's turn meter before attacking. This effect cannot be resisted if the target has higher max HP than this champion. So if you've got a boss that can be turn meter manipulated, she can steal 100% of the turn meter and it can't be resisted, so you don't need to put accuracy in her build, and it's an attack, an enemy max HP move. So all 3 attacks are absolute smacks. They're the equivalent to Royal Guard, Armiger, Cold Heart, or Septimus. So they all do the same ability, or Husk, they all do that ability, but she has it on every single one of her attacks. Also, her passive decreases the damage taken from AoE attacks by 50%. If a target's max HP is more than double this champion's max HP, which most bosses will have, this champion's attack will deal damage based on the target's max HP instead of champion's attack. So, what a crazy champion. Some people, myself included, are very lucky to have max HP champions in their roster, but Acrisia is just a whole nother level above them, and just has an incredible kit. So that's number 2, Acrisia. How can we top that? And I think if anyone knows, if I go up here and click on this one, there is one champion in this roster that everyone wants, which is Krisk. So Krisk is probably one of the number 1 champs on most people's list. Even if you have him, to have a dupe of him is incredible. So we'll go through his kit, and then I'll talk about why Krisk is so important to me and why he would make such a difference to my account. So, attacks all enemies, has a 30% chance of placing a 30% decreased speed for 2 turns. So, not that impressive. I've seen more impressive A1s, but against champions or against bosses like Hydra, that is an attacks all enemies and then can potentially put decreased speed on all of them. So not to be sort of missed, this ability. So his A2 attacks all enemies, places a 50% ally protection buff on all allies except this champion for 2 turns, places 2 15% continuous heal buffs on this champion for 1 turn, increases the duration of all ally buffs in 1 turn. So quite a mouthful. So essentially attacks all enemies, places ally protection on all allies, heals itself, and then increases the debuff of all allies. So Krisk is used in what I talked about earlier, which is these infinity teams, because if you build him fast enough, he can increase the duration of your buffs on all of your team over and over again if you match him with another champion. So then they have these buffs on them forever. So ally protection, shield for Brogni, and continuous heals, so you can constantly be re-healing yourself. Increased crit damage, and all of those sorts of buffs. Krisk can keep them on, and as part of that team, you have to have a Krisk to be able to achieve those massive numbers that we all see on the internet. And then the A3 places a provoke debuff on all enemies for 1 turn, places increased defense on this champion, places increased speed on all allies except this champion. So great in other content. You basically stop the enemies from being able to use any of their abilities apart from their A1. You increase the defense to stop their incoming attacks hurting you as much, and then increase speed for your other champions so they can take out the enemies. So that's great for other content, not necessarily as important for Clan Boss, but great for other content in the game. And then on his passive, at the start of each round, places a shield buff on all allies for 2 turns, equal to 50% of his max HP, has a 75% chance of placing a decreased defense buff on and decreased attack buff on the attacker for 1 turn when hit. So another one that's just strong utility in all content, including Clan Boss, to be honest. So Krisk, my number 1 pick. If you know anything about Krisk, and if you know the luck and the shouting that people have when they pull a Krisk, you'll understand why he's at the top of my list. What a champion. And just those sort of top 5 on the list, I think would make absolutely huge differences to my account. Hence why I sort of ranked them in that way. So yeah, in my next shard pool, let's hope one of those top 10 champions come my way, and I'll be running around the house screaming, I think. But yeah, that's my top 10 champions, guys. If you want to let me know what you would want, then please let me know in the comments. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.